Young bartender should refill mug of thirsty patron at corner bar.
Those things are so vague they could apply to anyone.
On screen, they seemed unstoppable, confident, charming, even larger than life. But behind the laughter was a reality most viewers never imagined. Coach was literally dying as he made millions laugh. Ted Danson, America's favorite bartender, was quietly sweating through every romantic scene, gripped by self-doubt. And Kelsey Grammer, the man who gave us Frasier, once called the show terrible. Why did the most confident characters carry the deepest insecurities? Could that hidden struggle be what made their performances so real? But the most heartbreaking secret was hidden behind Coach's lovable confusion. The Coach's final performance.
Oh, here! I bought 30 gross. Take your pick.
30 gross of two hunters saying, "Did I hear a buck snort?"
No.
Cheers. He was its innocence. Every bar needs a soul, and Nicholas Colasanto gave his through Ernie Pantuso, the slow but lovable coach who could drop the simplest line and still stop the room. But while millions laughed at his mix-ups and one-liners, most never realized that Season 3 was literally killing him. Behind the bar, Colasanto was fighting a war no sitcom audience could see. He had battled alcoholism for more than 20 years, a fight that had wrecked his health long before he ever landed on Cheers. In the late 1970s, he joined Alcoholics Anonymous and somehow turned his life around. That recovery was part of what made him so believable on screen. Coach's goofy wisdom, those moments when he seemed to cut through all the noise with childlike honesty, came from a man who knew what it meant to lose everything and start again. But sobriety didn't undo the damage. Years of drinking left Colasanto with severe heart disease. By the time Season 3 rolled around, his health was collapsing fast. Castmates noticed he looked thinner, but nobody grasped how bad it was. On set, he began forgetting lines, not because he didn't know the script, but because his body simply couldn't keep up anymore. Sometimes he'd blank out mid-scene. Rather than embarrass him, the crew quietly stepped in. They'd place his cue cards just off camera, or Woody Harrelson, who would later join the show, recalled how others would gently guide him through. In the middle of a sitcom about bar banter and good times, Nicholas Colasanto was performing with one foot in the grave. And here's where it gets chilling. During Season 3, he was hospitalized multiple times between tapings. Some days he came straight from the hospital. Imagine that. A man who could barely stand was still walking onto a brightly lit stage, pretending to be the most carefree character in the room. He was playing a man whose whole gag was forgetting things, while in reality, his heart was failing and his memory slipping away. Go back and watch those episodes from Season 3, especially the later ones. You'll see it. His face looks gaunter, his energy dimmer, and his timing just a little slower. It isn't acting, it's a man's life winding down in front of a live audience. Have you noticed it? Or did the laugh track and the bar chatter hide the truth until now? By early 1985, his body simply gave out. Colasanto died at home of a heart attack at just 61 years old. And in a tragic twist, the final episode he filmed already felt like a farewell. In his last scene, Coach is quietly cleaning the bar, humming to himself, then walking into the back room. There's no big joke, no dramatic exit. Just a man slipping into the background, never to return. He had, without realizing it, filmed his death scene. The cast was devastated. Cheers wasn't just losing a character, it was losing its father figure. Ted Danson said Colasanto was the glue, the one who kept the set warm and human. And the producers made sure his memory stayed inside the bar forever. On the wall of Cheers, right near the bar counter, hung a framed picture of Native American leader Geronimo. That was Colasanto's personal good luck charm, a photo he kept in his dressing room during filming. After his death, the crew hung it permanently on set. And if you look closely, in almost every episode after Season 3, Geronimo is still there. a quiet tribute to the man who played Coach. What makes this even more haunting is how close Colasanto's real life was to his character. Both men were gentle, both had endured hardship, and both leaned on simplicity and kindness as their armor. Viewers laughed because Coach was forgetful. What they didn't know is that Nicholas Colasanto was forgetting for real. Viewers loved Coach's words of oddball wisdom. What they didn't know is that those lines came from a man who had clawed his way back from addiction, who knew the value of a second chance. And so, the tragedy of Cheers isn't just that we lost Coach too soon. It's that most fans never realized they were watching his farewell performance in real time. The man who made millions laugh was literally dying as he stood behind the bar. But here's the question. Coach wasn't the only one on Cheers hiding a devastating secret. If Nicholas Colasanto's battle was physical, another star's war was internal, hidden behind the mask of confidence. And this time, the struggle didn't just affect the show, it nearly destroyed the man himself. But who was it? And how did the most confident man in the bar start having self-doubts after the cameras stopped rolling? The psychiatrist's prescription for chaos.
Hello, Normie. Let me know if it bothers you.
Bothers me.
Join the club.
And if Coach's story was about a body breaking down, Kelsey Grammer's was about a soul on fire. Because while Nicholas Colasanto quietly faded behind the bar, Grammer was just stepping into the spotlight as Dr. Frasier Crane, a role that would eventually make him one of television's most iconic figures. But here's the twist. In one of his most shocking confessions years later, Grammer admitted he thought Cheers was, quote, terrible. Imagine that. He didn't even want to be there. The show that gave him fame, wealth, and a spin-off empire was, at first, a job he looked down on. So how does a man go from dismissing Cheers as beneath him to clinging to the character of Frasier for 20 years? To understand that, you need to look at what he was carrying off-set. Back in 1975, long before he ever walked into Sam Malone's bar, Kelsey Grammer's life was shattered in one of the most brutal ways imaginable. His younger sister, Karen, was kidnapped and murdered. She was just 18. Grammer was 20 years old when he got that phone call, and by his own words, that moment cracked something inside him that never fully healed. He said it gave him a pain so intense that he felt he couldn't live with it sober. And that's where the addictions began. For the next 15 years, Grammer leaned on cocaine, alcohol, and pills, especially Valium, not for fun, but as a prescription for chaos. He admitted he used substances as a way to numb himself, to muffle the noise in his head. He wasn't partying to feel good. He was using it to avoid feeling anything at all. By the time Cheers came calling in the early 1980s, his habit was already full-blown. On the outside, audiences saw a polished, witty psychiatrist whose highbrow arrogance made everyone laugh. But off-camera, Grammer was stumbling through nights of blackout drinking and mornings that began with a line of coke. He once admitted he'd even start the day with alcohol just to get steady enough to function. And the chaos didn't stop there. His personal life spun out just as wildly as his drug use. Grammer himself described being drawn to threshold experiences, moments of intensity where life teetered on the edge of destruction. That attraction pulled him into stormy relationships and reckless choices. There were arrests for cocaine possession, multiple drunk driving incidents, and rehab stints that didn't stick. Even during his peak years as Frasier Crane, the smug psychiatrist who could solve everyone else's problems, Grammer was quietly unraveling his own. And here's where the irony hits hard. Audiences loved Frasier because he was sophisticated, refined, and cultured to the point of absurdity. But behind the scenes, Grammer was living the complete opposite, a man caught in binges, courtrooms, and hospital visits. It was almost as if his character became the mask he wore to hide the wreckage of his real life. You could laugh at Frasier fumbling through his overconfidence, but if you look closely, sometimes there's a flicker of something darker in his eyes. Was that acting? Or was that Grammer's real pain slipping through? What do you think? Can you spot the difference? Go back and watch some of those early Frasier episodes when he's lecturing Niles or puffing himself up over wine and opera. And ask yourself, is that comedy, or is that a man desperately clinging to an identity that feels safer than his own? And remember that shocking confession about Cheers being terrible? Some fans think that was arrogance, but maybe it was something else. Maybe Grammer couldn't admit that this sitcom, this thing he once dismissed, became the only stable anchor in a life spinning out of control. Because without Cheers and without Frasier, what would have been left? The psychiatrist gave advice to millions, but Kelsey Grammer couldn't save himself. He was brilliant on screen and broken off it. And that's what makes his story one of the darkest truths in the Cheers legacy. While Coach's tragedy played out in his failing body, Grammer's war was invisible, a private spiral into addiction that haunted him even as audiences cheered. And yet, he wasn't alone. Because while Grammer was numbing his pain with cocaine and chaos, the leading man of Cheers was fighting a very different battle. Ted Danson, the charming bartender who seemed to have it all, was secretly sweating through every romantic scene, gripped by fears nobody ever saw. So how did America's smoothest bartender end up terrified of love when the cameras stopped rolling? Sam Malone's secret sweats.
You were a drunk?
Are you kidding? He was a great drunk. Anything that kid did, it was great.
And if Kelsey Grammer's chaos was about battling addiction while playing a psychiatrist who had it all together, Ted Danson's truth was almost the reverse. On screen, Sam Malone was the confident ex-ball player turned bar owner, a smooth-talking womanizer who could charm anyone who walked through the door. But in real life, Danson has admitted he was nothing like Sam, and the gap between the character and the man nearly broke him in those early years. Danson later confessed that he didn't have an ounce of Malone's arrogance. He wasn't a ladies' man. In fact, he barely even went to bars before Cheers. He didn't know how to pick up women. He didn't have that cocky swagger. And he certainly didn't feel like the type of guy who could just walk up to someone and win them over with a smile. So imagine being cast as America's ultimate playboy when deep down you were painfully shy. It showed in those first seasons. Danson admitted he would literally sweat through his romantic scenes. Every time he had to flirt with Shelley Long on set, his body betrayed him. He'd start sweating, his palms damp, his face flushed. He felt embarrassed. What audiences saw as confidence was often a man just trying to survive the scene without looking awkward. Go back and rewatch some of those early Sam and Diane moments. Can you see it now? The nervous flick of his eyes, the slight hesitation before a kiss, the subtle stiffness when he leaned in. That wasn't acting. That was Ted Danson's real discomfort bleeding through the character. And speaking of Shelley Long, their on-screen chemistry might look legendary today, but Danson revealed that their off-screen dynamic was horrible in the beginning. Two actors with opposite personalities were thrown together to carry one of the most important TV relationships of the 1980s. Danson said he and Long clashed hard at first. Their working styles didn't match, and their tension was real. But ironically, that friction fueled the electricity on screen. Sam and Diane's constant push and pull, the bickering that turned into passion, came partly from two actors who couldn't quite figure each other out behind the camera. For Danson, though, it took a year and a half just to feel comfortable playing Sam. Imagine that, one of the most famous sitcom roles in history, and the guy playing him was secretly terrified for the first 18 months. He was learning to fake confidence he didn't actually feel. And yet, that struggle may be why Sam Malone worked so well. Because underneath all the bravado, Sam wasn't just a womanizer. He was vulnerable, sometimes insecure, and even a little lost. Danson's real-life shyness gave the character a layer of authenticity no script could write. But his personal life didn't stay hidden forever. While America thought Ted Danson was the charming bartender who always had control, Tabloids later exploded with one of the biggest scandals of the 90s. Danson's affair with Whoopi Goldberg, revealed while he was still married, cost him a $30 million divorce settlement. At the time, it was a massive story. The smooth bartender America adored was suddenly the guy splashed across every magazine cover for all the wrong reasons. It was a brutal reminder that even behind the most polished performances, real life can spiral into chaos. And here's the fascinating part. Knowing what we know now, some of Sam and Diane's most iconic moments hit differently. Think about those long stares across the bar, the hesitation before a kiss, and the vulnerability when Sam admits he's afraid of losing Diane. Was that just brilliant acting, or was it Danson's own insecurity shining through? If you re-watch those scenes now, with this in mind, they almost feel more real. As if we're seeing Ted Danson himself, not just Sam Malone. What do you think? Which Sam and Diane moment feels different to you now that you know the truth? The kisses where he looked nervous? The arguments that felt a little too sharp? Or the tender pauses that didn't feel scripted at all? Drop your thoughts in the comments, because this is one of those secrets from Cheers that flips how you see the entire show. And that's what makes Danson's story so powerful. His secret sweats, his shyness, his lack of Sam Malone's natural arrogance, all of it accidentally made the character more relatable. Viewers didn't just see a perfect womanizer, they saw a man who could fumble, who could doubt himself, who sometimes looked like he wasn't sure of the next move. And that made Sam Malone unforgettable. But as complicated as Danson's insecurities were, the cast of Cheers was hiding even more shocking truths. Because the bar wasn't just a workplace comedy set. Behind the scenes, it became a web of real-life relationships, betrayals, and scandals that sometimes rivaled the drama of the show itself. And the most explosive revelations weren't about fictional romances at all, but about the real affairs and heartbreaks that nearly tore the cast apart. The hidden love affairs.
There he is, he just flew down your shirt!
And just when you thought the drama of Cheers was all about what happened in front of the cameras, the real shock comes when you peek behind the curtain. Because if Sam and Diane's romance felt messy, that was nothing compared to the tangle of emotions playing out between the cast when the director yelled, "Cut." Kirstie Alley, who stepped in as Rebecca Howe after Shelley Long left, dropped one of the biggest bombs in her memoir. She admitted that her co-star Woody Harrelson would incessantly insist we sleep together, half joking and half serious. Think about that. The innocent bartender Woody Boyd, the wide-eyed kid from Indiana who made America laugh, constantly teases or maybe half-seriously pushes to cross a line with Alley. She wrote that it became this strange, ongoing tension, playful on the surface, but with an edge that blurred the lines between comedy and something more personal. Now picture that dynamic simmering under the surface during filming. You've got Alley delivering Rebecca's sass, Harrelson playing Woody with his naive charm, and layered on top of it, this unresolved off-screen push and pull. It gave their on-screen chemistry a spark you can feel even now when you re-watch the show. Was it acting? Or was it the friction of real desire mixed with restraint? That's the question. And it wasn't just romantic tension. Off-camera, the Cheers bar itself was less glamorous than it looked. The cast admitted the beer they sipped during takes was actually flat, warm, and salty. Imagine spending your nights pretending to enjoy pint after pint of what was essentially liquid cardboard. It became a running inside joke, one of those grimy behind-the-scenes details that shatters the polished illusion of TV magic. Then there's the story about Brad Pitt. Yes, that Brad Pitt. He auditioned for Cheers, and the casting team flat out said he wasn't funny. Think about how history could have changed. The guy who would later become Hollywood's ultimate leading man was turned down because the producers didn't believe he could land a joke. It's almost surreal. But in a way, that rejection reinforces how tight-knit and specific the Cheers chemistry had to be. The producers didn't want just good-looking. They wanted people who could deliver timing, tension, and rhythm. And not even Brad Pitt made the cut. All of these little off-screen truths created a strange energy that bled into the show. Allie and Harrelson's tension made their interactions pop. The bitter beer gave the actors a physical reminder that this wasn't as glamorous as it looked, grounding their performances. And casting decisions, like saying no to Brad Pitt, proved that the producers were chasing a particular alchemy, not just star power. And here's the big thing. That mix of personal conflict, flirtation, and disappointment is what gave Cheers its bite. It wasn't just a sitcom about a bar. It was a stage where the secret battles of the actors quietly shaped the characters. When you see Rebecca and Woody bickering with that edge of annoyance, now you know there's truth beneath the lines. When you see the cast knocking back beers like old friends, remember the taste was closer to seawater than a frothy pint. And when you think about all the celebrities who might have walked through that bar, imagine Brad Pitt serving beers as Woody Boyd. Suddenly, the version we got feels almost faded. So, let's put it to you. Which off-screen pairing shocks you the most? Kirstie Alley and Woody Harrelson's unresolved tension, Ted Danson's real-life scandals, or the thought of Brad Pitt being rejected by the producers of Cheers? Drop your vote in the comments. Because here's the hidden truth. All those off-screen love affairs and tensions, the rejections, the salty beer, they were shaping the show in ways viewers never realized. And together, they created something almost magical. Something no one expected. The accidental magic formula.
It is with the understanding, isn't it, of what this step we're about to take means.
And here's where the magic of Cheers gets almost spooky. Because while the show looked carefully designed, some of its most iconic parts happened completely by accident. Take Norm and Cliff. They weren't even supposed to exist. The writers had a tiny part for a background guy named George who had exactly one line. He was supposed to walk into the bar and say, "Beer?" That's it. George Wendt came in to audition, nailed the timing, and suddenly Norm was born. The barfly who never left, the man who turned one word into an entire character. And here's the kicker. Norm was actually inspired by a real Boston bar regular who sat in the same spot every night, beer in hand. That's why he felt so authentic. He wasn't just a sitcom character, he was someone you could swear you'd seen in your own neighborhood pub. And the hidden Easter egg? Norm's unseen wife, Vera, the one he always complained about, was voiced by none other than George Wendt's real-life wife. That's why their back and forth landed with such bite. Then came John Ratzenberger. He auditioned for the same one-line part, but before leaving the room, he asked the producers, "Do you have a know-it-all in the bar?" They didn't, so he started riffing random facts on the spot. That improv became Cliff Clavin, the postal worker who couldn't stop lecturing everyone. One unscripted moment built one of the most memorable characters in sitcom history. And here's the paradox that made Cheers work. The cast was full of insecurities, accidents, and even chaos. Yet those flaws turned into the formula for one of the most beloved shows ever, lasting 11 seasons. So which revelation hit you hardest? Was it Coach's hidden fight, Ted Danson's insecurities, or Brad Pitt's almost joining the cast? Drop your thoughts below, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more.